is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Dye Hansen, management consultant, with me co-host Christine Salvo, therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Good morning, everybody. Hello.
Good morning, everybody. And today on the show, we have Kevin Hancock, who is an award-winning author, speaker, and CEO. Established in 1848, Hancock Lumber Company operates 10 retail stores, 3 sawmills, and a truss plant. The company also grows trees on 12,000 acres of timberland in southern Maine and is led by 550 employees. Hancock Lumber is a 6-time recipient of the Best Places to Work in Maine Award. The company is also a recipient of the Maine Family Business of the Year Award, the Governor's Award for Business Excellence, the MITC Exporter of the Year Award, and the ProSales National Dealer of the Year. Kevin is a past chairman of the National Lumber and Building Materials Dealers Association. Kevin is also a recipient of the Ed Muskie Access to Justice Award, the Habitat for Humanity Spirit of Humanity Award, the Boy Scouts of America Distinguished Citizen Award, and Timber Processing Magazine's Man of the Year Award. Kevin's first book, Not for Sale, Finding Center in the Land of Crazy Horse, won 3 National Book Awards. His second book, The Seventh Power, One CEO's Journey into the Business of Shared Leadership, released February 25th, 2020, and was distributed by Simon & Schuster. Kevin is a frequent visitor to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota and an advocate of strengthening the voices of all individuals within a company or a community through listening, empowering, and shared leadership. Kevin is a graduate of Lake Region High School and Bowdoin College. He lives in Maine with his wife, Allison. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Diane, Christine, thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you.
And how do I pronounce that college name?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Bowdoin.
Bowdoin. Okay. I'm like, it's pronounced, it's definitely spelled different than it is pronounced. But, it's interesting, the different nuances of voice and language. And it seems like your career was built in lumber, but it was solidified when you had a pivotal moment in your life by losing your voice. So what's the story about that?
Yeah, the short story is in 2010, at the peak of the national housing and mortgage market collapse, which was a really stressful time if you were in the lumber or construction business. I acquired a rare neurological voice disorder called spasmodic dysphonia, or SD for short, that made speaking, the simple act of speaking, which I'd always taken for granted, suddenly very difficult. And I never thought about it this way, but it hit me quick then. As a CEO, someone said, "What is your tool?" It's your voice. That's what you do all day, is you talk and you communicate. And suddenly I couldn't use my voice very much. So that was kind of moment number one. And then a couple years later, as you talked about, I serendipitously started traveling out to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the southwest corner of South Dakota, which is the kind of the biggest, poorest, and most historic of all the Sioux reservations on the northern plains. And there, among other things, I encountered an entire community that didn't really feel heard. And I put the two events together and was like, there are lots of ways for people to lose their voice in this world, and that leaders across time had probably done more to restrict and limit the voices of others than to liberate them. And those two events led me to really transform how I thought about leadership. And essentially, I came to see the partial loss of some of my own voice as an opportunity to disperse power and strengthen the voices of others. And in conclusion, like at our company, I said, well, what if everybody led? What if the leadership voice of the company was a symphony of every individual voice? And I just got really interested in new leadership models that push power out, not collect it, make the central leader's voice smaller and everyone else's voice bigger, which is a pretty timely topic today too, as you look at the world and everything that's going on. So that's the short story.
So, how do you go about setting something like that up? Because I imagine that initially every employee that you've had was very used to the top down structure of leadership. So, how do you set that up in terms of not just the org chart, but encouraging the culture?
Yeah, I first got forced into it because I literally couldn't talk much. So I'll give you an example. Someone come up to me at work in a really kind of traditional exchange because I was the CEO or the boss with a question or a problem. And because I couldn't talk a lot, what I started doing was simply saying, that is a good question. What do you think we should do about it? And at first, this wasn't a leadership strategy. I was just trying to protect my broken voice. But after months of doing this, what I realized was so simple yet powerful. People already knew what to do. They didn't actually need 99% of the time a directive from above. All they needed was the encouragement to trust their own voice and to know that it was safe to trust their own voice and to act on what they believed would be right. So then from there really was a lot of work to build a new leadership model, essentially around getting managers to manage less, not more, which is counterintuitive and definitely took a lot of work on our part before we kind of got in the flow of that different approach. Because really, you think about what management historically is, it's about supervising other people. And I've really gotten into a model of loosening, if you will, that supervision so as to disperse the power and share the leadership.
I'm loving everything that you're saying right now. And I'm even thinking truly for your leaders, for your supervisors. What a relief. Their job is now to empower their employees rather than kind of be Mr. Grumpy Face Bad Guy micromanager, right? Because I've known tons of supervisors that feel like they have to micromanage in order to justify the job because they feel sometimes like they're not doing anything, especially if they were promoted. It's like, wow, I used to be the worker bee so busy, and now I'm just kind of hanging. And so I got to find something to do, and I need to look productive, and I need to, right? And so what a relief of like, you're doing a great job by empowering your employees.
You hit such a core point there. When leadership is shared, it gets so much, the lifting gets so much lighter for everyone. We have 550 people at our company, and if they're all leading, the role of leadership is easier for everybody, lighter for everybody, and the weight of it all doesn't fall on any single person or small group of people. It really is, Christine, liberating.
So do you still have supervisors in this format?
We do, but their role is just very different. They're really, most of the time, facilitators. They're really kind of protectors of the brand, advocates for the values. If you have a really clear value system so that everybody knows what you are and are not about, it's actually quite easy to make choices and decisions on the fly. And in the world we live in today, where everything's moving so fast, I was looking at some year-end data, and we had over 300,000 customer transactions last year at our company.
Wow.
Like a transaction every 15 seconds. You can't manage that from a tower. There's just too many things happening too quickly, and really the leadership model that fits the world we're in today is flat. It is dispersed, but it takes breaking from those long-standing traditions of how people think they're supposed to lead.
So if somebody wants to, say we have a leader listening to this show right now who's redoing their work chart, wants to consider more of a flat organization, where would they begin?
Yeah, I think that it's really, well, that's a great question. Our org chart didn't change a ton, but what managers and supervisors do with their time is what really changed. And specifically, we focused on two things, I would say. First, you've got to make time for process. This is one of the toughest things for managers to buy into, because you might already know what you want done. So it's very tempting to just tell people what you want done. The problem with that is the people who are going to do it haven't bought into any of that. So we built a lot of time into our processes for huddling, small group employee huddles, where the purpose of the huddle was to listen. And then we had to work on second part, why are we listening? This is critical. We're listening for understanding, not judgment. The whole idea is for everybody to be heard and to get beyond right or wrong. When I was a younger manager before my voice condition, I really honestly, in reflection, was listening to judge whether or not I liked what I was hearing. And now what I really promote is listening is just for understanding. And you don't need to judge what people say. When someone says something now in a huddle, here's my answer pretty much every time. Thank you for sharing that.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So this completely falls in line with, I tend to have some repetitive conversations throughout a day. It's really bizarre, actually, being a therapist, seeing human behavior patterns of and I've had this conversation 4 times today, because people do tend to go through things in cycles, right? And at similar times. So one of the conversations I was having today was actually about shame. And I said, well, shaming someone is saying that your way of being different is better than their way of being different. And someone ends up being superior. And to prove that you're superior, you're shaming someone. You're putting them down for that, right? And so that really kind of falls in line with what I'm hearing you say here, which is I'm just listening to hear where you're coming from. I'm not listening to poke blame, poke shame, make you feel bad, make me feel better. It's not about the superior, inferior. It's more about the conversation, the collaboration, and seeing how our differences are complementary if we listen hard enough, right? If we're really open, you can bring something to me because you're different. And it's only when I'm afraid of different that I try to shove it, shame it, blame it, and make it different. But when we're open, we can receive, our world gets bigger.
That is so true. I heard a really great talk the other day. Someone was talking about hiring and flipping focus. The old focus at hiring would be, can you conform and fit in? The new focus is, can you bring something different and unique that we don't already have? Which, of course, when you release the human spirit, everybody can. Every human spirit is unique by design. So this is really about releasing that, not trying to tame it. It's flipping that script.
I think that's really important point, Kevin, is that conformity does not breed innovation. Change and difference breeds innovation. And for innovation, open companies that want to be cutting edge, they want to grow, they want to scale, they don't want to subscribe to business as usual. This dispersion of leadership is really a strategy that they should be handling. What would you say to a leader who does want this innovation as part of their company, but they're just having a little bit of a hard time getting past the old roles of management?
Yes, I think that's common. Again, I was lucky in an odd way because my quote unquote disability, which I'd come to see as a blessing, threw me into this pool. But I can see how for others it might be a bit scary. What I might say about that is that for us, two things happened. One, we actually got a lot more disciplined. One of the questions I always get is, Kevin, this all sounds great, but when everyone can just do whatever they want, what happens to best practices and efficiency and productivity? Ours went up dramatically, like through the roof. And when I look at why, it's really simple. People are much more apt to support that which they help create. Mm-hmm. And to put this in perspective, because some people do want the data behind the values. So our company has been in business since 1848, since before the Civil War. In the decade that we flipped to this approach, we made more money in 10 years than we made from 1848 to 2010.
Wow.
We took off. And you understand the spirit with which I'm saying this. I'm not bragging about the money. That was not ever the goal. That really, to me, is the outcome of a higher calling, which is giving everybody a voice. My favorite question for humanity is this: what if everybody on earth felt trusted, respected, valued, and heard? What would change if 8 billion people felt that way? Everything would change. Everything would change. Mm-hmm. And okay, maybe we don't ever get to 8 billion people feeling that way, unfortunately, but we should face that way and work towards it. And where are you going to work on that with adults? Well, the place of work is actually the obvious place to do it, because that's where adults are, first of all, and investing big portions of their life. And as a byproduct, it can dramatically revolutionize the performance of a business.
So you have, at the time of the bio writing, 550 employees. And so that's no small organization. So what are some of the methods that you share with your top line, your leadership, your supervisors, those who are, including others, on ways to include people, have them be heard, tools, things like that?
Yeah, I think the big one for me really comes from that timeless thought from Gandhi, which is become the change. Just become the change you wish to see. So I take me as an example, again, thrown in. Suddenly I couldn't talk very much. Couldn't. And so all I could do, because I didn't want to give up my job, was to start listening more and let other people talk and share the stage. And when I changed, that's when others around me change. Leaders really do set the tone, either intentionally or otherwise, for how we're going to treat each other. and whether or not a place of work is going to be safe, deeply, authentically safe. And all I really had to do was focus on changing myself. I'm not kidding. It was that simple. And that just in time rippled through the organization.
So it's not like you're applying, some of also the old standards of listening to employee surveys, performance review feedback, things of that sort. It really is as simple as close your mouth, open your ears.
It is. We have those tools, surveys and huddles and feedback, but it's really having patience for process and putting as much of the decision making as you can with the people who are actually going to do the work. It actually makes so much sense. It's almost irrefutable to me. And it's simple. I've come to think about it this way. The old model of controlling everybody, that's complicated. That takes a ton of hierarchy and rules and meetings, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
The model of letting everybody be a human being is, that's the way nature wants to flow. It's like when you go with the path of humanity, you're suddenly in the river going downstream versus trying to paddle upstream. Controlling everybody is hard.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, I'm like, gosh, that's so much effort, right? And we can bring this personal too. Controlling other people's is not just hard, but it's impossible. You just can't do it. And so many people waste so much time trying, right? Instead of having these conversations. And so I was really kind of thinking about this when you were talking about it, of the crossover between personal relationship and professional, and exactly what you're saying, right? So if we brought this home, and that's also one of the ways we change this world. So if our work environments are inclusive and caring and reciprocal, and we felt like we could have these conversations, number one, I believe the gossip would drop because people wouldn't be unhappy. People typically gossip about how unhappy they are, or how the CEO's never done my job, doesn't even know what I do, and he just gave me 3 more things to do when I'm already swamped, and we're both emailing each other and chatting going, screw this place, So when we bring it back to, I always like to bring things personal, obviously, because everything we do is personal, in my opinion, whether you're going to work or staying home or in your relationships, whatever that is, and really looking at that as well. How often are we talking instead of listening, directing, trying to control, trying to get our way, trying to manipulate the situation, rather than having that open format dual leadership in our homes, in our families, with our kids, up, down, all around? What are your thoughts on that?
It's so true. It's beautiful what you just said, and to me, irrefutable, Christine. And I just take my own experience. My life in the last 10 years got so much easier, and the weight got so much lighter, and the performance got so much better. I say that somewhat jokingly, but not totally. I can barely find anything to do at work anymore. It is a riot. I'm the CEO of a company with $250 million in sales, and there are no voicemails. I don't get a ton of emails. I can't really find anything to do. But that, for me, is the new ultimate complement of senior leadership. To get to that point.
I think love that.
Yes, exactly. And that is it's really the dream it's the difference between having a job and being an owner. And when you step into that ownership place, you own the culture. You might inform the process or be informed about the process, but overall, you do truly become that thought leader, that person who sits at the the head, but isn't the entire body. that the body can operate without you, which
Right.
is
And
awesome.
the other big point to me is why. And the why to me is not for the performance of the company. It's for creating super meaningful jobs that allow adult human beings to self-actualize. I'm really into finding a higher purpose for work. So, profitability and revenue growth, those are super important things. But I think in the 21st century, they can and should be the outcomes of a higher calling. That higher calling is helping the people at your company come into their own voice, self-actualize. And if everybody comes into their own voice, it's like, get out of the way, because this company is going to just hum along. It is going to zoom and cook and set records. But that's the outcome, not the goal. The goal you talked about, Christine, it's all personal, whether you're at work, at home with family, or with friends. And bringing that approach into that traditionally rigid company first corporate America, that's another big thing that's got to change.
Absolutely. And I don't want to get on a tangent, but I will say I was on a walk with my girlfriend the other day, and she was talking about a friend of ours that had a baby. And she said, oh, they gave him like 4 months paternity leave. And then we got on this whole tangent of like, that's a good company. And they're like, they're respecting that males need to be home to bond with the baby too and help with those first. And so culture really is changing. And even us as consumers really look to those things of like, do they have good paternity? Are they taking care of people? If you have a life-changing event, do you get the time you need to adjust? Is work the number one thing, or is there room for life?
Right. And bringing life and humanity into the place of work. It was always, spirit and work were in their neutral corners. And like, you go to work and then you live on the weekend or on vacation. And what a silly bargain in the 21st century. So when you bring those together, you can create just a much more dynamic, vibrant, meaningful workplace.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, you've won many awards for your ideas, Habitat for Humanity, Boy Scouts. I mean, the list goes on and on. So your thoughts are definitely being recognized as ones that have the potential to shape our world. So if our listeners want to learn more about your thoughts, where would they go?
So they would go to my website, and I love bias, but I love the name of my website. Get this, it's www.thebusinessofsharedleadership.com. And there are all kinds of resources like this. Our time together will live on that site, and they can contact me on that site or take a look at my books, any of that stuff.
Yes, beautiful, wonderful.
I love it. That's www.thebusinessofsharedleadership.com. Kevin Hancock, thank you so much for being on Business Therapy. It was an absolute pleasure having you. I know you've inspired me for my company, and I hope you've inspired many, many listeners, whether they're sitting in the rank and file or they're leading teams of their own, to just do things differently.
Well, you're both great, and I'll be on your show anytime. It was my pleasure. So thank you.
Yes,
thank you
so lovely
much.
having you. Thank you.
This has been Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Hansen, management consultant.
And I'm Christine Salvo, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Have a great and productive day. Bye-bye. This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Dye Hansen, management consultant, and with me co-host Christine Salvo, therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Good morning, everybody.